All righty, it looks like everyone has joined the meeting. Okay, we'll get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's virtual public meeting about Harris County Water Control and Improvement District Number 50, WCID 50 Drainage Improvement Project. My name is Jeannie Peng with the Harris County Engineering Department, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. The Drainage Improvement Project is brought to you by WCID 50, Harris County Precinct 2, Harris County Flood Control District, and the Harris County Engineering Department. I would like to first go over some meeting format notes before we begin. All mics will be muted throughout tonight's presentation. Following open remarks and our engineering presentation, we will enter into the question and answer portion. This is when your questions can be submitted in the chat box and answered live by our panelists. We also have a translator available for questions submitted in Spanish. We are pleased to have Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner Adrian Garcia and WCID 50 Board President Mario Runco Jr. with us tonight to provide opening remarks. So without further delay, I would like to ask Mario Runco Jr. to begin with his opening remarks. And I believe Commissioner Garcia will be joining us shortly.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the meeting and showing the interest in our project as we move forward with it. I also would like to thank Commissioner Garcia for his support, along with the Harris County Engineering and Harris County Flood Control District teams, as well as Harris County commissioners in general. Without their support, this project would not have moved forward. And I'll explain a little bit about that as we move along. As many of you may know, this project is 3 years in the making, and the clock is still running on it. Of course, we're getting to the point where work will soon begin. We started this project right after Hurricane Harvey, when many homes in the district had flooded. It was a traumatic experience for many of our citizens, and we took it on the task of investigating why this may have been. Aside from the discovery of the blocked outfall to Clear Lake, we then went to model the entire district. We took elevations and had a working numerical model of the district with its entire drainage system. And using that numerical model, we ran several scenarios by virtually changing the system. So we could virtually, in the numerical model, change a pipe here, enlarge one there, add one here. And we did many, many scenarios throughout the last couple of years. And then by trial and error, we found several that worked. And then we further studied them, and then found one that was optimum, that would provide the most benefit at the least cost. And even at that, the cost of the project was estimated by our engineers at $9.5 million. And that is where this team, and I'd like to thank all the members on the conference today, they were very helpful in vetting our engineering work, not only in that, but in then finally approving a grant of $4.75 million. And the other half is being put up by the district through your tax dollars. So we appreciate that. The $9.5 million will improve drainage throughout the district for many years to come. And we appreciate, again, the vetting on the engineering work here. And then finally, of course, the issuance of the grant, without which we wouldn't be here today. So there's lots of work that remains to be done. This is not something that happens overnight. And for many of you behind the scenes, and not deliberately so, because we've had numerous public hearings and meetings. Like I said, many of you are familiar with all of this. So through the process, we've arrived to this point where we had essentially a final product to present to you. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. So now we enter our engineering presentation for tonight, and I would like to introduce Ramon Herrera with Midtown Engineer. Ramon?
Thank you, Jeannie. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramon Herrera with Midtown Engineers. Go next slide. And I'll initiate the engineering portion of the presentation this evening. We'll start off with this slide introducing the WCID 50 project engineering team, and these are some of the key members. Obviously, we have a lot of other folks behind the scenes on the team. Starting with the Harris County Engineering Department, Brennan Cook, Marcus Baskin, Coco Yuko. With Midtown Engineers is myself and Carrie Hoppel, who's the engineer of record. And then finally, HG&J is our drainage engineer. We have Nawa Ponte and Max Gilliam. Next slide, please. This slide shows the WCID 50 project location. As many of you know, it's shown here by the red line, bordered by Taylor Lake on the west, Clear Lake on the south, predominantly single-family residential. There is some commercial businesses along the south side of the district there along NASA Road 1. Next slide, please. Purpose of the project, as Mario kind of touched on, is to assess the historical flooding, reduce the flood risk within the WCID 50 service area, and more importantly, reduce the number of flooded homes and alleviate some of the ponding in the streets. Next slide, please. We completed an existing conditions survey overview in our study. As many of you know, the neighborhood was developed and built back in the 1960s. It is an existing curb and gutter storm sewer system. There are some open ditches, some around McNair Memorial Park. There are 10 storm sewer outfalls to the entire system. 7 outfalls going west to Taylor Lake, and there's 3 outfalls going south to Clear Lake. Next slide, please. The existing issues, as many of you know, flooding during some major storm events. There's flood risk to the residential properties in the area due to the undersized storm sewer system, which was designed to older standards, and then ponding in the streets due to some of the subsidence and the more frequent and heavier rainstorm events. Next slide, please. The proposed improvements. This is a broad summary, and we'll get into more detail here later in the presentation. We're looking to increase the storm sewer diameter sizes on 9 streets. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be benefits on other streets. There will be benefits throughout the WCID 50 area and neighborhood. We're going to increase the outfall diameters to Taylor Lake at Crestwood, Whitecap, and Tallowood. And we are going to have a flow reversal on Woodland from Shadow Creek to Tallowood. And what that will accomplish is that's going to alleviate some of the drainage burden on the southern part of the system, which is overutilized, and shift it to the central part of the system, which is currently underutilized. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the improvements. As you can see, this is the northern part of the community. The key takeaways here are the 3 outfalls at Crestwood, Whitecap, and Lakeshore that are going to be increased in size. So that's going to be a big benefit. The 2 major improvements here are Whitecap and Crestwood. Next slide, please. In the southern part of the project area, we'll be increasing storm sewer diameters for Lakeshore Drive, Woodland Drive, Tallowood Drive, Shadow Creek Drive, Willow Vista Drive, Cedar Lane, and Confederate Way. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn the presentation over to our engineer of record, Carrie Hoppel.
Thank you, Ramon. Good evening, everyone. As Ramon said, my name is Carrie Hoppel with Midtown Engineers, and I will be the engineer of record on this project. These next few slides are going to give you a little more detailed view of the proposed alignment and sizes that we are looking at for the storm sewer system. Starting with Confederate Way here, we are connecting to the storm sewer inlet on the left side of your screen, and we will be putting the storm sewer behind the curb along Confederate Way on the north side, all the way up to Cedar Lane on the right, where we will connect to an existing storm sewer manhole. Excuse me. Now, one thing we're going to be doing is obviously there will be sidewalks and driveways located along the path of construction in some of these areas, and those sidewalks and driveways will be removed and replaced in the areas of construction on all these streets that we're going to be discussing. Any utility conflicts that we come across will be adjusted accordingly either before or during construction. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now on feeder lanes, we will be connecting to the storm sewer system on the top left side of your screen and running along the back of the curb all the way up to Shadow Creek, which is down on the right-hand side of your screen. There will be two connections with the proposed Willa Vista and the Shadow Creek storm sewer lines. Next slide, please. On Willa Vista, we will connect to the Woodland Drive system on the left side of your screen, and we will run behind the curve on the north side of the street all the way to the right, where we will connect to the Cedar Lane storm sewer system that was built. Next slide, please. On Shadow Creek, this is a similar situation on Willa Vista. We connect to Woodland Drive on the left side of the screen. We run along behind the back of the curve along on the north side of Shadow Creek, and we will tie in with the Cedar Lane storm sewer system. Next slide, please. On Woodland Drive, we will connect to the existing storm sewer system on the left side of your screen, down on the south side of the road, and we will run all the way up towards Tallowood Drive on the right-hand side. In the middle of the screen, roughly around Shadow Creek, you can see the arrows where the proposed flow line reversal will be done. Next slide, please. On Tallowood Drive, you'll see over on the left-hand side of your screen, Taylor Lake. This is where we will be increasing the existing 60-inch pipe to a proposed 6-foot by 5-foot reinforced concrete box. On Tallowood, we will be connecting at the intersection of Lake Shore and running all the way up to the tennis courts where we connect to the existing storm sewer system. This line will also be constructed behind the back of the curb. Next slide, please. On Lake Shore, this is the section where we will be doing some construction in the street. We are going to be replacing the existing storm sewer that is connecting the manholes that you've been driving on those streets. On the left side of your screen, you see the short section that we're going to do just south of Tallowood. Then we pick up again and start at the intersection of Tallowood and Lakeshore Drive. We go along Lakeshore all the way up to McNair Park on the right-hand side of your screen. Right before we get to the park, we will shift the proposed storm sewer behind the curb for a short section before we tie in to the existing storm sewer inlet in the parking lot. Next slide, please. On Whitecap, this is where we are increasing an existing 48-inch pipe outfall into Taylor Lake up to a 72-inch pipe outfall. The storm sewer system through the park will follow the existing alignment, which runs along the southern and eastern portion of the park. Once it intersects with Whitecap at the top of the park, you will head to the right along Whitecap, running behind the curb all the way over to Lock Lake Drive on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Next slide, please. At Crestwood Drive, this is where we will be increasing the existing 54-inch pipe outfall into Taylor Lake into a 72-inch pipe. We will be removing the existing storm sewer in that area and replacing it in the same exact location. And we will run the alignment all the way up to Lake Arbor Drive. Then as we go into Crestwood, we will be behind the curb all the way from Lake Arbor to where Crestwood bends on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. As I stated in the beginning, any sidewalks and driveways that are located along the path of this construction will be removed and replaced. Any utility conflicts that we come across will be adjusted prior or during construction. And now I would like to turn this back over to Ramon.
Thank you, Carrie. I will be over, these are the scenario A and scenario B will be our two construction scenarios, so you can kind of get an idea of what the construction phasing will look like. In scenario A, you see the homes on both sides of the street, the yards, the sidewalks, and of course the curb and gutter street in the middle. The existing storm sewer is behind the curb, and it will be removed. In that same trench, the proposed storm sewer will be installed, backfilled per Harris County Engineering Department standards, and the sidewalk and driveways, as Carrie stated, would be restored to original or better condition. Next slide, please. In scenario B, the existing storm sewer is under the road, and the proposed storm sewer is behind the curb. To minimize disturbance and shorten construction time, we will be abandoning some segments of the storm sewer under the street. That will also save money for the project and minimize the amount of construction activity in front of many homes. The proposed storm sewer will be installed similar to scenario A. Next slide, please. The traffic control plan is fairly straightforward. This is a standard Harris County Engineering Department traffic control. It's a one lane, two-way flagger operation. This traffic control will be implemented at the beginning of the workday, and it will be taken down at the end of the workday. There are no detours planned for this project at this time. Steel plates will be utilized as needed, and we will make sure that all driveways will be accessible throughout the construction process. Next slide, please. How will this benefit your community? This is an exhibit that our drainage engineers put together showing a smaller storm event on December 7th, 2018. As you can see, this is Confederate Way. There was 14 inches of ponding, as is shown there with the purple and pink during this storm event. Next slide, please. With the proposed storm sewer drainage improvements, that same ponding will be reduced to 2 inches. So that's a reduction of 12 inches or 1 foot in ponding. So that'll make it more accessible for the traveling public, whether you're in a car or you're on foot on a sidewalk. You're not going to see that water come up and over the curb and onto sidewalks and lawns. Next slide, please. This is a before and after cross section showing you the top, what it would look like now with the current storm sewer system, and then with the drainage improvements after at the bottom. That's a full 12 inches reduction in ponding there. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn it over to our drainage engineer, Max Gilliam, and he will talk about the detailed summary of improvements.
Hi, everybody. This is Max Gilliam, as he just said, with HT&J. We did the drainage analysis for this project. So the summary of the improvements for the entire community is listed in front of you now. And just quickly for reference, you'll see 10 through 100 year storms on the side there. For reference, a 10-year storm, what that means is that there is a 1 in 10 chance that that storm can happen in any given year. So therefore, a 10-year storm is smaller and a 100-year storm is larger. So going through this table just briefly, in the 10-year event, there are no homes flooded to begin with, but with the proposed improvements, we are seeing a significant reduction in roadway ponding and increase in passability for vehicles. During the 25-year storm event, we're able to eliminate all of the homes that would flood, as well as see significant improvements to roadway ponding. And then moving on to some of the larger rain events, such as the 50 and 100-year event, we are still seeing some homes with flood risk after the proposed improvements, but there is a reduction as well as a reduction in street ponding. It is difficult to remove all homes from flooding for these larger events due to the proximity to the lakes and the rising water that occurs during these large storm events. Next slide, please. So Hurricane Harvey was one of the main bases for our analysis. And according to the district, 87 homes flooded during this rain event. So we analyzed this with the existing conditions And then we analyzed this same storm event, if it were to happen again, for instance, with the proposed improvements. And we are able to see a reduction in 50 to 75% in the flooded homes. And on that exhibit that you can see there, that was the main area that was flooded, and we saw significant reduction in flooding in that area. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Max. So what's next for the project? We are in the study phase, nearly complete with the study. Design phase is well underway. It will be completed here in May of 2021. The construction phase is expected to start in the fourth quarter of this year. And Harris County will be sending notices, obviously prior to the construction phase and during the construction phase with more detailed information and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Max, Terry, and Ramon. All right, so now we would like to open up our question and answer portion for any questions that you may have regarding your area's drainage improvement project. On our panelist, serving as our panelist, we have Mario Runco Jr. with WCID 50, Marcus Duckett with Harris County Flood Control District, Ramon Herrera, Carrie Hopple, Maxwell Gilliam with Midtown, Coco Uco, Marcus Baskin with Harris County Engineering, and Scott Elmer with Harris County Flood Control District. Here's how you can submit a question for a live response from our panelists. Next slide. You may submit a question using the chat function on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered in order, verbally by meeting panelists. A Spanish translator is available for questions submitted in Spanish. Any remaining questions following the end of the meeting will be gathered and responded to at a later date. We want to remind you that any questions may also be submitted via email at recovery@eng.httx.net. So with that, I'll go ahead and start reading off questions for our panelists to respond. Okay, we have a question, panelists. When is construction slated to begin and end?
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Coco Uco with Harris County RID. I'm the project manager. And right now, construction is slated to begin later in 2021 in the fourth quarter. So we're expecting around September, October. And we expect it to end within 16 to 20 months of starting.
Thank you so much, Coco. And I would like to introduce Commissioner Adrian Garcia with Harris County Precinct 2. He has joined us on this meeting. We're going to go back to his slide. And Commissioner, can you hear me?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
All right, Commissioner.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all, and I will be brief, but I just want to say thank you to everyone on this call, everyone who has taken time to help guide us on this particular project. I just, before I get into the project itself, though, I do want to touch on a couple of things. And number one is that obviously we've been working through a very difficult 2020, and 2021 has gotten off to a bit of a rough start, but we're hoping it will be much better going forward. But to that end, let me just say that we have been very aggressive in making sure that we get as many vaccines out to the Precinct 2 community as much as possible. And we would welcome the opportunity to partner with any of you in Terror Lake Village or in Seabrook. I'm in constant communication with your mayors, but making sure that people have access to the vaccines who are wanting one and needing one. This is critical to strengthening our economy and keeping us open. And so for me, it's important that I let you know that we're working very, very hard, and anything we can do to help that take place, please keep us posted, and we'll work with you. I want to thank my staff for being on this call. Doug Peterson in particular is helping me represent the area. So if there's anything that you need from my office, please reach out to Doug, and he'll make sure to help facilitate whatever information or support or services you may need. To that end, let me just now address this particular project. I'm excited about this project because one of my key focuses since coming in as your commissioner has been to address chronic flooding. And this particular project is a partnership project between my office and the Water Improvement District to ensure that we're sharing the cost in order to bring the project to fruition and making sure that we're doing all that we can to mitigate and prevent chronic flooding as to the extent possible. Obviously, Mother Nature has a big say in that, but we want to work with all of our partners to do all we can to keep Mother Nature at a distance. We welcome a nice little rain, but please, not as much water as we tend to get on occasions. To that end, let me just again thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. I always appreciate members of the community who participate in these projects, in these discussions, because I really do believe that you tend to make the projects better when you give us your input and your perspective. So to everyone here, I want to thank you all. And obviously, as I said, this is a partnership project. So I want to thank Mario Ronco for his partnership and his leadership at the district. And without his help and that of the district, we would not be able to make this project happen. So again, thank you. And also thank you to the County Engineering Office, Flood Control, the Flood Control District, and to the members of the various cities, Seabrook and Taylor Lake Village. Thank you all very much. And I will tune out so I can let you guys get to work. So thank you very much.
Commissioner, thank you so very much. Appreciate it.
And excuse my casual appearance. I was got a bike ride in earlier, and that's why I'm just jumping on. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, we will continue with our question and answer portion of this meeting. I just want to remind you right there in the red box is where you can submit your question for response. And we have a list of panelists here waiting to answer your questions. So I'll go with the next question. With the larger outflows, is there a greater risk of lake water flowing into storm sewer system? Is there a way to put in backflow preventer type devices?
Well, I can start that, and then I guess I'll turn it over to Ramon or Carrie. As far as lake water rising, the water rising seeks its level. It's immaterial to the size of the pipe. Gravity and things level. As water rises, it rises uniformly, whether it's in a 4-inch pipe or a 64-inch pipe. So that is not anything that really changes. But the larger pipes do allow water to drain out much faster, a larger volume, to exit faster. And it also provides a little bit of storage capacity before it erupts above ground and comes out of the manholes. So there is benefit to that, but as far as changing the rate of rise with the level of the lakes, that's something that's not possible at this point in time. And as far as the backflow preventers, I'll let Carrie or Coco or Ramon address that.
Yeah, I think Max, can you speak a little bit about the backflow preventers?
Yeah, so in the past, we have had experience where flood control district does not prefer to have backflow preventers, I believe because it's a maintenance issue. Feel free to correct me, anybody, if I'm wrong, but typically we stick to just the open-ended outfalls on these types of projects.
And thanks, Max. I might add as well that there is a larger project. The capabilities of Harris County and WCID 50 are, being the size of entities that they are, is rather limited. The type of protection for the community that is the question is for the entire littoral area of Clear Creek and even Galveston Bay. And right now, and I believe one of our constituent cities signed a letter of support, a proclamation, if you will, supporting those efforts to protect the entire Gulf Coast, which protects our community as well. And that is a joint project. I say joint, it might even have more partners to it than the two I'm going to mention, but it is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the federal level and the Texas General Land Office on the state level are looking into protecting in the way of inflow from the sea, prevent water levels in Taylor Lake and Clear Lake from rising. But those are projects on the scale and scope that would need federal funding and state funding, much larger than the pockets that Harris County and the district have even combined.
Thank you, Mario. Our next question, after installation, will the system be maintained by WCID 50 or Harris County?
It will be maintained by WCID 50. It'll be ours. We'll take care of it.
Thank you. Someone asked about, I think we have to back up on the slides. Where does the project begin in the order presented? Ramon?
Yeah, I'll answer that. This is Ramon with Midtown Engineers. We're obviously going to work with the contractor once the contractor is selected to assess the phasing for the contract for the project. We have some phasing in the plans, but obviously there's some flexibility as to how, depending on the contractor and their workforce and resources, how they want to tackle the project during the construction phase.
Thank you. For the larger storms, flood reduction for a 100-year storm goes from 94 homes to 68 homes. What future potential projects could provide incremental improvements, and can we get in the queue for these potential improvements?
So I think this is Max Gillen with HT&J. I can speak to the first part of that question. In terms of any future projects to help with those large storms like the 100-year event, we went through a lot of options and were unable to find a way to reduce flooding for those events. And the main reason was you see a lot of rainfall, but you also see the lake levels rise to a level that causes flooding no matter what. And no amount of storm sewer improvements can lower the level of those lakes during the large storms. So sort of tying into what Mario was saying earlier, some of the larger regional projects can help with that, but any local storm sewer improvements are limited in that capacity.
And if I may, Max, I will add that having been close to the subject with Hurricane Harvey and this community experienced in the past, I am convinced that the improvements that we are about to implement will provide drainage improvements and home flooding protection at the higher end of that 50 to 75% that you cited earlier. I think our experience here locally has shown that we think that will be the case. And so a little bit of assurance on the part of the district to our constituency. The granularity of the model is hard to, it is very difficult to have the model get down to that level without increasing significant cost into the sophistication of the model.
Thank you, Mario. What will the street flooding be on Lock Lake, the primary access road to our schools? Will there be any improvement during heavy rain tropical storm events?
So I think I can speak to that again. Max Gillen with HT&J. So another thing we looked at during this analysis was that area by the school, because we know we've been told that there was flooding there. And just given the elevations there of the street and the nearby schools, the way that just the elevation outside of the drainage system is, there were no improvements without excessive costs, upwards of $5 million extra on top of this project that would provide any sort of significant flood reduction to the system. So even for $5 million, we were only seeing a reduction in a few inches of ponding, which still left most of that area unpassable during those large events. So during the heavy rain tropical storms, I'm not sure if you're just referring to that area, but overall in the system, there is significant benefits in the majority of the areas, yes.
And Max, let me add to that. The district, are looking at cooperating with Ed White Elementary School and the city of Seabrook, along with Harris County. This is a small addition to this project. It has a possibility to be added. There is the water that collects around the school, and CCSD and the city of Seabrook are doing a great deal of work to help relieve some of that drainage. And I think this is something that, Max, you may not have been aware of, but half of the water that was previously being delivered to our system for outflow to Taylor Lake is now going to be diverted not to the west, but to the east. And it's offloading our system and is going into the city of Seabrook system, and then going routed to Clear Lake farther to the east. Having said that, so half that water is not going to be seen by ours. So that hasn't been modeled, but and maybe we could. That contrary to what maybe Max had said earlier, there might be improvement in the ponding during those roads. We are also looking at adding some drainage in cooperation, again, with CCISD and the city of Seabrook. And this is a very nascent project by adding some lines that run north-south along the east of the charter school and north of Ed White to collect some of that water that ponds there and drain it in twofold fashion. The initial idea is to drain it to the north and then into the city system, and then half of it, or 60-40, we're not sure of the split yet, to the south into an extension of the CCISD City of Seabrook system that they are now working on. So we are still looking to make improvements beyond this drainage improvement project where we can. But I will go back to what Max said. This project is about the best you can do given the dollars. You start to get into, doubling or tripling the cost, and you only get marginal improvements going beyond what we are planning to do.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you, Max. Will you be fixing my driveway?
So I can answer that. This is Ramon Herrera with Midtown Engineers. So as Carrie described, in the path of the new proposed storm sewer, all driveways will be removed and replaced up to the property line. In addition, it will be removing and replacing sidewalks and also the portion of the footpath up to the homes, up to the property line. So that's anything in the path of construction along that side of the street.
Thank you. Would active storm sewer elements, powered pumps, etc., provide incremental or additional improvements for the 100-year storm events? Does the county or Harris County Flood Control District support such elements, and why or why not?
I think that might be better answered by someone with county or flood control, whether they do support that, before I take a crack at it.
This is Scott Elmer with Harris County Flood Control. We generally do not design systems or operate or maintain pumps because of their tendency to fail during storm events. We have issues with electricity reliability on that. So in general, from a Harris County flood control system, our preference is for passive systems rather than systems that require maintenance and operations and are subject to reliability issues during storm events.
Thank you, Scott. Next question, will any trees be removed from private property or HOA parks? And if so, will remediation tree replacement be included in the scope of the project?
So we don't have this, Ramon, with Midtown Engineers. There's not any, there won't be any removal of anything on private property at all. There may be some smaller shrubs or vegetation that may need to be removed. We just completed our first submittal. We find that there are some trees that will require mitigation. We'll definitely ensure caliper size, like for like installation, but we're obviously trying to avoid the removal of any large trees, anything of that nature. But definitely, yeah, nothing on private property.
Thanks, Ramon. These are actually really great questions, so we do encourage you to keep them coming, so thank you. Water is flooding our neighborhood in the small rain events. Why?
Which neighborhood is that?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, I'll just start by saying we have a system that was curb and gutter. The streets are part of the drainage system. They were designed that way in the 60s. The water runs into the streets to collect and then into the storm sewers. The size of those storm sewers were built to a 1960s standard. Since then, we've had rainfall and storm events more frequently, and it has subsided substantially. The elevation of the land within WCID 50 has sank 5 feet in the last 50 years. If you walk down to Taylor Lake or Clear Lake, bring a north wind in January or February and stand at the top of a bulkhead, you will see the tops of the old bulkheads that were put in the 60s that used to be at ground level and 5 feet above the water level. So that is a problem that is Gulf Coast, not Texas Gulf Coast, but Houston, Harris County area wide. The subsidence has been arrested for the most part. It's still going on, but it's very minute at this point. And that's why we have a Harris County subsidence district to monitor that and prevent land from subsiding even further than it has. Having said that, there is not a way that we know of to, if you will, mudjack the entire county to raise the elevation of the land back to where it was. So we have what we have at this point, and we're doing the absolute maximum effort here to eliminate drainage and homes from flooding and ponding in the streets. Given that background, you will see a significant increase. I am very confident of that in the improvements. That is a decrease in ponding levels in the streets, much less frequently, much less in height, and also in the major storm events, you will see many fewer homes being threatened by the implementation of this project. Max, if you wanted to add to that.
No, I would say that you pretty much summed that up perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Another question is, how do we keep access to our driveways?
So the construction methodology would generally be open trench. There will be notifications before the contractor gets to your driveway. If there's an open excavation overnight, it will be covered by a steel plate or some other methodology to ensure you have access across your driveway. So that'll be carefully coordinated with the contractor.
Thanks, Ramon. Another question, and this came up earlier, but it's come up a couple times. Where would this presentation be? And so you can share it with your neighbors, and I'm going to drop a link here in the chat function. It's www.eng.hctx.net/the word recovery the word resiliency. So it's right there in the chat. We're going to have that on the next slide as well. But that is where you can find this presentation. Also, someone asked, how can I receive updates during any time? You can also email us at recovery@eng.hctx.net. That's recovery@eng.hctx.net. It's right there on the screen. So we'll be happy to take your questions and your comments and have a project manager respond to your questions. So with that, I'm going to ask Ramon, would you like to go over your slides for those who joined us late in the meeting?
Sure. Start back up at the top, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once again, for those that are here at the beginning of the meeting and those who just joined us, my name is Ramon Herrera with Midtown Engineers. This slide here shows the limits of the WCID 50 district in red. As you can see, bordered by Terry Lake on the west side, Clear Lake on the south side. It is predominantly single-family residences with some commercial businesses along the south edge of the boundary there along NASA Road 1. Next slide, please. The purpose of the project is to assess the historical flooding, to reduce the flood risk within the WCID 50 service area, and definitely to reduce the number of flooded homes and alleviate the ponding in the streets. Next slide, please. During our study, we completed an existing conditions overview. As many of you know, the neighborhood was built and developed in the 1960s. It's an existing curb and gutter storm sewer system with some open ditches. There are a total of 10 storm sewer outfalls to the storm sewer system, 7 outfalling to Terry Lake, and 3 outfalling to Clear Lake. Next slide, please. The existing issues are flooding during some of the major storm events. There's a flood to the residential properties due to the undersized storm sewer system, which was designed to the much older standards. And there's ponding in the streets due to the subsidence and obviously the more frequent and heavier rainstorm events. Next slide, please. This is a general summary of the proposed storm sewer improvements that we are designing and will be constructing later this year. We'll be increasing the storm sewer diameter sizes along 9 streets. We'll be increasing the outfall sizes to Terry Lake at 3 locations, including Crestwood, Whitecap, and Tallowood. And we'll also be reversing the flow of storm sewer at Woodland Drive from Shadow Creek to Tallowood. And what that will accomplish is that will alleviate some of the burden on the southern part of the system, which is overutilized. And we'll send it to the central part of the system, which is currently underutilized. Next slide, please. There's an overview of the proposed improvements, the northern end of the district boundaries. The main takeaway from this slide is the 3 outfalls sizes that will be increased significantly to Terry Lake at Crestwood, Whitecap, and Tallowood. Next slide, please. On the southern area, we'll be increasing the storm sewer diameters along multiple streets, including Lakeshore, Woodland, Tallowood, Shadow Creek, Willow Vista, Cedar Lane, and Confederate Way.
Ramon, if you
Yes.
don't mind, if I might interject here.
Absolutely.
I would like to point out and thank Nawa Penthi and Max Gilliam for they are the ones who came up with the idea that is depicted on this slide at the northern end, where you have the yellow and red with the new pipe and the flow reversal. They were doing the trial and error with the model to find out what would really help with drainage. And besides the increase in pipe sizes, this is key to the city Because if people would look, if you, everywhere from Shadow Creek south, that, and, or everything depicted on this slide to the, from north to south was all being carried from north to south to Taylor Lake to the two outfalls that we see at the southeast corner of the district. So, and that portion of the system was burdened. Doing that additional pipe connection that's shown in light green or turquoise, and doing the flow reversal in yellow there in that area is key. Seeing a lot of the flooding in that southern area, and it carries the water not to the south and burdening that system, but to the north and then to the west into Taylor Lake. So it splits a lot of the flow and relieves the burden on the existing system, but even more so now with the increased capacity of pipes, they're going to be quite significant. And again, thanks to NAWA and Max for doing that due diligence.
Thank you, Mario. It's a good point. Now I'll turn over the presentation to our engineer of record, Carrie Hopple, and she'll go over in more detail for the nine street drainage improvements.
Thank you, Ramon. Good evening, everyone. As Ramon stated, my name is Carrie Hopple with Midtown Engineers, and I will be the engineer of record on this project. The next few slides that we're going to show you are going to show you the proposed layout and sizes of the pipes that we are going to design for. We will start talking here with Confederate Way. We are going to connect to the existing storm sewer system on the left side of your screen. We will then move the storm sewer behind the curve all the way along Confederate Way up to Cedar Lane, where we will turn and connect to an existing manhole. Any sidewalks and driveways on this street and the additional streets I'm about to talk about that are located along the path of construction will be removed and replaced. Also, any utility conflicts that we come across will be adjusted accordingly, either before or during construction. Next slide, please. We now are going to look at Cedar Lane. On Cedar Lane, we will begin on the top left side of your screen, where we will connect to the existing storm sewer system, and we will progress behind the curb up along Cedar Lane all the way to Shadow Creek Drive. There will be two connections, one to Willow Vista storm sewer system that we're designing and one to the Shadow Creek Drive system that we're designing. Next slide, please. Thank you. On Willow Vista, we will start by connecting on the left-hand side of your screen to Woodland Drive system. Then our storm sewer will move along the back side of the curb on the north side of Willow Vista, all the way to the right side of your screen, where we will connect to the Cedar Lane system. Next slide, please. Shadow Creek is very similar to Willow Vista. We connect to Woodland on the left side of the screen. We will construct behind the curb all along the north side, and then we will connect to the Cedar Lane system on the right side of your screen. Next slide, please. Thank you. On Woodland, we will start with connecting to the storm sewer system on the left-hand side of your screen. We will then progress behind the curve to the majority of the project all the way up to Tallowwood, where we connect. You can see a little towards the center left of your screen at the intersection of Woodland Drive and Shadow Creek. This is where we will begin the reversal of the storm sewer flow that everyone's been talking about. Next slide, please. On Tallowwood, this is where our first outfall on the southern portion that we're working with is located. You'll see on the left-hand side of your screen, we will be increasing the 60-inch pipe outfall into a 6-foot by 5-foot concrete box. For the Tallowwood Drive Street storm sewer connection itself, we will start at the intersection with Lake Shore. We will construct the storm sewer behind the curb along the north side of Tallowwood, all the way to the right hand side of your screen, and we will connect to the existing storm sewer system there at the court. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, Lake Shore is where we will be doing some street construction. We will be replacing the existing storm sewer system that's already in the street, and we are connecting at the existing manholes that you're already seeing as you drive along that street. On the left hand of the screen, you'll see the short section that we will be doing just south of the Tallowwood and Lake Shore intersection. Our construction will then pick up again at that intersection, and we will progress up Lake Shore all the way towards McNair Park. Right before we reach McNair Park, we will turn the storm sewer system into a behind the curve construction, and then we will move it over to connect to an existing inlet that's located in the parking lot. Next slide, please. Thank you. Whitecap is our second outfall that we are working on. We will be increasing the existing 48-inch pipe into a 72-inch pipe. The storm sewer system through the park will follow the existing alignment, which runs along the southern and eastern border of the park. As the storm sewer alignment intersects up there with Whitecap, we will run the storm sewer system behind the curb along Whitecap all the way to Lost Lake Drive on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Next slide, please. Crestwood Drive is the third outfall that we are increasing. We will be taking out the 54-inch pipe and replacing it with a 72-inch pipe. We will be replacing the whole alignment of that existing storm sewer through that park, and it will follow the same exact alignment all the way up to Lake Arbor Drive. As we go into Crestwood Drive, we will move the storm sewer system to behind the curb on the south side of the roadway, and it will go all the way along Crestwood Drive until you see Crestwood Drive on the bottom right-hand side of your screen as it does a turn to head north. As I stated in the beginning, any sidewalks and driveways along the path of construction for this storm sewer system will be removed and replaced, and any utility conflicts will be adjusted accordingly either before or during construction. And I'd like to turn this back over to Ramon.
Thanks, Carrie. Next slide, please. Next two slides describe the two general scenarios for the construction phasing. Here in scenario A, as you can see, the homes on both sides of the street, your yards, sidewalks, and the concrete street in the middle. In this scenario, you have the existing storm sewer behind the curb that will be excavated and removed. The proposed storm sewer will be installed in the same trench, backfilled. The sidewalk and the yard will be restored to original or better condition. Next slide, please. In scenario B, the existing storm sewer is under the road, and the proposed storm sewer is behind the curb. And what we are proposing currently is to abandon segments of the existing storm sewer that are under the road. This will reduce the construction time and disturbance in front of your homes. It will also reduce the overall project cost, and it will still allow us to install the design proposed storm sewer system that we have in the plans. Next slide, please. The traffic control is standard Harris County Engineering Department traffic control. This is a one-lane, two-way flagger operation. This traffic control will be implemented at the beginning of the workday and will be taken down at the end of the workday. We do not have any detours planned at this time anywhere within the project limits. We do anticipate using steel plates as necessary so that you will have access to your driveways maintained throughout the construction process. Next slide, please. How will this benefit your community? The next couple of slides were put together by our drainage engineer, and this shows us December 7th, 2018 storm event. I believe this was about a 5-year event that created 14 inches of street ponding there on Confederate Way, as you can see in the purple and pink areas there. Next slide, please. With the proposed storm sewer improvements, that 14 inches will be reduced down to 2 inches. So a significant improvement for this one storm event. will make obviously a lot more safer for vehicles to travel in public, whether you're walking or driving, and a lot safer for everybody. Next slide, please. This again shows a cross-section of the road there for this storm event on Confederate Way. Before on the top is the 14 inches of ponding going over the curb onto the sidewalks and even yards in some cases. And down at the bottom is the after scenario, which is a full foot, 12 inches in reduction of ponding, keeping that water pretty minimally contained there between the curbs. Next slide, please. Now I'll turn over the presentation to our drainage engineer, Max Gilliam with HT&J.
Thank you, Ramon. Yep, so yeah, we did the drainage analysis for this project. And this slide shows the summary of improvements for the entire community, so throughout all of WCID 50. Quickly for reference, you'll see the storms listed 10 through 100 year. The 10-year storm event, what that means is that there's a 1 in 10 chance that this storm could happen in any given year. Same with the 100, it's a 1 in 100 chance. Therefore, a 10-year storm is smaller, a 100-year storm is larger. So looking at the table here, for the 10-year event, no homes are flooded to begin with, but with the proposed improvements, we see a significant reduction in roadway ponding and an increase in the passability for vehicles. During the 25-year event, we start to see some flooded homes, but with these proposed improvements, all of them will be removed from flood risk, as well as some significant improvements to roadway ponding. And then looking at some of the larger storm events, like the 50 and 100 year, we are still seeing some flooded homes, but there is still reduction from or with these proposed improvements, both to homes and in ponding in the streets. It's difficult to remove all homes during these events due to the combination of the large rainfalls and the lake levels rising. If we go to the next slide, please. And looking at an even larger event, Hurricane Harvey, we were told by the district that 87 homes were reported as flooded, with the majority being in this red shaded area here. With the proposed drainage improvements, what we did was we analyzed if Hurricane Harvey were to happen again with the proposed improvements, we would see a 50 to 75% reduction in flooded homes. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Max.
Yep.
This is Ramon with Midtown Engineers. So what's next? Our study phase is nearly complete. Our design phase is well underway with completion coming to an end here in May of 2021. Construction phase is expected to start in the fourth quarter of this year. And Harris County will be providing notices, obviously prior to construction and during the construction phase with more information and resources. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, thank you, Max, Carrie, and Ramon. We have time for one more question, and that question is, since there is a large area to be touched for our small city, how will phasing of the work be accomplished?
So this is Ramon with Midtown Engineers. We have a phasing plan in our plans currently. The phasing will greatly depend on the contractor that wins the project, wins the bid for this project. Typical rule of thumb is we don't like to see more than 400 to 500 feet of excavation. We're not going to allow the contractor to excavate 1,000 or 2,000 feet, and we'll go work on another street. So it is going to be work in a work zone, remove the pipe, install the new pipe, bring everything back to original or better condition, then move on to the next section. We're definitely not going to allow for different areas to be disturbed and left in that manner until they're completed.
Jenny, let me also add on to that for the construction. Typically on projects like this, we'll start at the outfall or the downstream section and work upstream to the smaller sections. Like Ramon said, on average, 400 to 500 linear feet a day. And then if we get to a certain point where the pipe has been replaced, then most likely crews will come back in behind them and kind of follow with them to do the sidewalks and the driveways. Kind of lagging behind the storm sewer, since it takes a little bit longer to put the storm sewer in than it does doing sidewalks and driveways.
Thank you. Thank you, Brock. So this wraps up our Q&A portion of our meeting, and we want to invite you to contact us at any time via email at recovery@eng.hctx.net. That's recovery@eng.hctx.net. Doug Peterson, I see you right there in the chat function. So he also has an email there for Commissioner Garcia. We are happy to answer any questions you have regarding the WCID 50 subdivision drainage improvement project. Also, a link to tonight's presentation will be posted in the very near future to the website you see there on the slide. So with this, we want to conclude our virtual public meeting. So on behalf of Harris County, we thank each of you for joining us tonight. Please stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.